Okay, hello and thank you for tuning into Stampscaping 101. This is the Loon scene that I stamped out with the Northern Lights introduction take 2. My microphone battery ran out and I didn't realize that the other night, and my introduction was without sound. But anyways, this is a Northern Lights type of scene. It has a lot of streaks of variations of green and kind of a lime green ink laid into it to kind of create this, I don't know, this emerald, kind of warm emerald type of glow using several layers of dye-based inks. And I wanted to create kind of a dramatic setting for this new Loon Splash stamp in kind of a manner that I was thinking about when I was designing the stamp. And it's an upcoming stamp. It's not out quite yet, but soon. And it's designed fairly silhouette in style, so that there's a lot of kind of a strong silhouette nature to it, but it does have some variation in there, just so you can see kind of more of a three-dimensional aspect to it. Now, I stamped this out the other night, but the inks have kind of had a chance to dry, so they're not as deep and saturated as you'll see at the end of this video if you choose to watch the video. If it's not to, you can kind of just scroll to the end of the video and see the deeper saturations. But the saturations will come back once I spray this scene with a clear acrylic spray. But in this video, you'll see me use basically, to get that Northern Lights type of glow down, you'll see me using several layers of ink. I usually work from a lighter tones, and I streak those in, and I'll work all the way up to the darker tones. But in order to get this kind of nice deep saturation with this type of look here, inevitably I have to go back with the lighter tones, and I'll kind of add some of those over the top of, you know, the previously streaked in colors, because inevitably, I don't know, it gets kind of anemic in, I don't know, kind of in appearance, so that you really have to go back in and layer some more of those tones down there. Now, like I said, when I spray this, the saturations, you know, the degree of saturations and intensity of these colors will pop back. But some other techniques done in this video are just various things. Down here, this design is called Loon Splash, and I envisioned myself using a little bit of the splatter painting technique with the Dr. Martens bleed-proof white applied with a toothbrush, kind of a splatter painting toothbrush technique. So you get that kind of that varied look in terms of that texture, that white texture down there. And then I did some controlled applications of white dots with the use of a Uniball Signo white gel pen. And then, one of the things that I really like to do is I like to apply some white pigment ink over some of the stars in here, and over some of the trees. You can see it's down here, like these glowing little spears. Down there, I mean, I don't know what they would represent, but sometimes you see these movies or something like that that have these little kind of forest pixies kind of flying around. But I don't know, it just kind of gives it this little, kind of a little more of this magical type of appearance in a given space. They're kind of nice for textural contrast too, by having something soft amidst all of these sharp impressions. You know, we want our stamps to stamp out nice and sharp, but sometimes there's not. It's nice to have a textural contrast working in certain spaces. So that's what the white pigment ink applied in a very, very, very thin layer provides. And then going into some of the really tighter details, like these little tiny white gel pen dots up here. There's the splatter painting too, but there's also some colored gel pen dots, like these little green ones in here. And let's see if I can get it on camera. There's some purple ones in here too, which provide kind of a color contrast or complement to all that green. And then let's see if I can catch it again here. You can see in some areas, let's see if I can catch that light a little bit. But in some areas I put in some gold gel pen dots. And so yeah, you can see it right there. See those little clusters of dots? But doing those little things like that are really fun because it's one of those things that are kind of hidden. Let's say you give this card to someone, or you know, a similar card. You can kind of put in these little gel pen dots that are the same value as the colors in the background, the same relative darkness, lightness. But when they capture, you know, that light in the right angle, they'll glow. You know, they'll reflect that light and have that. You can see some of it down here. See that? That's gold pen, but it's kind of a nice little, I don't know, kind of subtle, if not hidden, detail to a card that's really fun to discover as maybe a recipient of such a card. So, I don't know, you can do that with all kinds of things. You can even write little things with, you know, a similar type of value to something in the background, and your recipient of your card will do something like this, and it's like, oh, it says something, or, you know, like I said, it kind of sparkles in a kind of a different way. So anyways, if you choose to watch the video, I hope you enjoy it, and thanks as always for tuning into the channel. Okay, let's try something quick and dramatic. Quick in terms of execution and dramatic in terms of final result, if we can. This is another image off of this bird sheet, available individually or on the sheet form. In the upcoming release, they're not out yet, but this one is this loon in water, and it's either taking flight, landing, or it could be this kind of mating dance, I think. But it has this kind of splashing action going on. And I've made it in somewhat of a silhouette nature. In that it's, you know, dark for the most part, but it does have some details in it. If you just make these things kind of flat, they look flat, which can kind of be interesting at times too. But I like to have the best of both worlds. I like to have a little bit of dimension, and then, you know, somewhat silhouette, you know, where it's called for. And with silhouette stamps, it really gives you a nice opportunity to do some pretty dramatic looking scenes, in that the background can be really busy and full, but you have an image that's strong enough to stand out in the foreground. And that's something that I've done with, you know, just about all of our designs. But on this release here, I've just gone quite a bit larger with some of the little figure stamps, such as little animals and people, you know, just to have them a little bit more foreground based. Or something in the middle. Okay, now I'm going to do a half-page scene. Now this is pretty long. It's a 4 1/4 by 11 inch, so it's cut lengthwise. Okay, and I'm doing that because I want to have space in here, and I'm going to put this right down at the base of the composition. And I wanted to do so. I really want these kind of dramatic visuals from a lot of the new designs, just, you know, because they are so bold and large, and in that way a little bit different than some of the other designs that I've done in the past, which are smaller, so that they can be a little bit more universal in terms of their application and where they're placed. The smaller something is, it can fit in smaller areas, but on this one, I just wanted to go large, and anyways, technical things, you know, that's why I have it in a set form as well. in a nice grouping, so I have some really large things like that. So when they're in set groupings, they're just cheaper to make, less time, and I can pass that on to the user. So anyways, that's why this release kind of took me a while, is because I had to do so many different images, you know, for an entire set for that purpose. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm thinking about this aurora borealis, these northern lights, and I think that kind of lends itself to a really dramatic sky. Now we have a lot of area to fill in, but I thought this kind of northern lights type of scene comes about pretty fast, so that's why I thought I would do that one. I have a few other things to do, but I thought I would do that. Now, let's see. Let me just take a lid here. And because I am going for a lot of coverage here, I'm going to start off with some re-inker fluid. Okay, now I'm going to be working in kind of this lime green, dark green, blue type of color scheme here. We've seen that type of northern lights in, for me, in photographs. I don't get northern lights down in, you know, California, but anyways, I have a lot of coverage here, and there's different ways to do it. You can do these kind of curtainy things that are kind of going, you know, in different angles. You know, if I was doing it in this one, it would be kind of this S curve, I think, but on this one right here, let's see, I want to have this a little bit mirrored, so maybe go with something like this and like that. Okay, so this is why I've gone with the re-inker fluid. You know, I get a lot of coverage like this, see? And I don't have to re-ink. It goes on really easy. This is a glossy cardstock and dye-based ink, by the way, and that color that I just used was an aqua. It's Adirondack Lights. Now, it is not, just to come to show you, you don't have to be too color specific either. I'm just going with something light, okay? I had this ink up, there was black in it, there was dark blue, so it doesn't look aqua, but it's fairly light, and you know, it's just kind of for coverage more than the actual hue. I'm not really interested in the hue of it. No, I'm not using orange or something like that, which wouldn't you know, mix with the blues very well, but you know, the black and the darker blue that was in there from my previous scene is, you know, is close enough for me, and I dabbed off a lot of it before I kind of re-inked, so just go with any kind of a light blue re-inker if you're going to do this one, or if you're doing kind of a stamp along type of application like this, and that's what you have, okay? So a little bit of a swatchy look to it. It's kind of fun. It's kind of like, I don't know, for me, I'm not really a painter, but I can kind of, you know, in this type of application, you know, kind of pretend I am for a moment. But I wouldn't insult any painters in the painting process to say that I am any good at it at all, you know. I'm more of a, you know, a harder tool person by nature, you know, black and white, pen and ink type of work. Not really graphite either, but anyway. So this is kind of a fun little thing that I do to give kind of that more free-form type of look to something, you know, that hand painterly look, which I love, but I'm not particularly good at it, so this is me just kind of faking it. Okay, now this is kind of a medium blue. It's they call it light blue in the Marvy line, but it's really more of a medium blue to me. It's probably like a I don't know, 30% blue or something like that in terms of the value of it, and the value scale, 100% being black. Okay, but see how that base coat gave it a really nice coating for this darker color to apply on, Okay, see it starting to develop there. We'll go into kind of the greenish tints now. I love, one of my favorite color schemes is kind of this really rich emerald green look. I love the look of like emeralds and that jewel when you see like it in movies or something like that. And there's this big bowl of them or something like that. I don't know, it always kind of stands out to me. Okay, there's still a lot of ink in here. Let me get some of that out. Might as well use it. I like kind of the darker sides of it, corners to be really saturated with ink. Probably kind of wondering, well, where's that bird going to go? The bird's going to be in a lake, but I'm just doing the background first because if I stamp out the images and I do this over the top of the images, black images, I don't think it's going to smear too much, but I just find that, the impressions when I have all of this kind of this action kind of going on in the background, I feel that when I stamp my imagery afterwards, it just looks a little more, crisp and I don't know, just a clean impression. Okay, this is a kind of a lime green type of color. If you have something like, the Memento pear tart would be good. There was that Distress ink one. What color was that? Green. Oh, of course, it's always at the bottom of my pile. Peeled paint would be good. I don't know, yellow might be a little bit too bright, even though, in that white part, but I don't know, you can use something like that. Okay, can you see that? It's certainly warming it up. It's kind of ugly right now, I think, in terms of that color scheme. Not because the colors are ugly, but, I'm going to add on some other tones. Okay, now this is the peeled paint, just to show you what that one would look like. It's real similar, right? So anyways, mix and match, you don't have to stick to, a real specific brand or something like that. I'm just going to go with the generals, think about it in terms of, kind of a light green, medium green, darker green. Are all pads created, the same, equal? Well, probably not. But they're all, somewhat similar in terms of the richness of color in them and, the density of ink. I don't know, what is it, the binder to pigment ratio. Fairly similar. The Marvy ones probably are a little bit brighter in general, in terms of the intensity of them, the brightness, relative brightness, not lightness, but brightness, just how vivid something is. But everything else, can work just fine. Alright, so kind of a nice little swatchy background there. Now let's try some of this Marvy one again. See how bright that color is right there? But then I do spread it out and it kind of dulls out just because the application of it isn't too strong, because it is starting to get damp here, so when you apply this you're applying kind of wet into wet. And wet into wet doesn't stick, it's not being absorbed into the pulp of the paper that fast. But that's a good thing, though, because it really gives you a lot of control, you know. I'm not going like that and having that set, you know. I can go like this on this paper right here, see that? And it just spreads out really nicely, not only because it's glossy, but because I have all those other inks underneath the surface of this ink being applied on the top of it. Okay, so we've kind of moistened the paper by quite a bit, but that really allows us plenty of time to spread our darker colors, because we don't want to get a bunch of, say, oval shapes from the stylus tool showing up, right? So if you apply your inks in this kind of method, and you do take time with those lighter coats, you know, this is one of the easiest processes you can do, and most kind of forgiving, because look at this. You can do that, no problem, just kind of spreading it out. Now, I wouldn't do that in terms of a technique. I was just doing that to make a point, you know, about kind of how, you know, kind of fluid this application process can be, and easy to do. Okay. All right. Let's move on. Let's go to blue. Now blue on, you know, a white piece of paper will look blue, but blue over this green probably won't look as such, okay? See that right there? It looks more turquoise, right? Because dye-based inks are transparent. And the colors underneath will show through, which is what you want. That's what we're going for. We're going for this kind of, this glowing looking surface, you know. And it's representing that sky and light. What is it? Kind of particles being from was it solar flares, I think, you know, being kind of electrocuted in our atmosphere, and thus they glow. At least that's what I think. That's what I think I remember reading, you know, about these northern lights. I don't know what it would count for the different colors, but I don't know. I find it fascinating. I never even saw a photograph of one until, I don't know, probably college or high school or something like that. I thought it was fake. Internet wasn't around or something like that, so I've had to have seen it in a book or something like that, but I just never did. Until one, I don't know, once, it's on like a travel magazine or something. Okay, so we're getting kind of darker here, but you kind of see these curtain-y types of things starting to form. It looks a little anemic to me, though. I want something kind of brighter, I think, so we'll think about going in with another green, maybe, or something like that, or some other type of bright tone. Remember, brightness and darkness are not the opposite. It's lightness and darkness, you know. But when I'm talking about brightness, it's the relative intensity of a color, how rich it is. Kind of a pastel would be, you know, on the duller spectrum of brightness. Okay. Ooh, this pad's looking pretty bad. A lot of my really old pads, going back 20 years, are starting to disintegrate. So this is a pine green here, but we'll see if we can get some color. Yeah, the color just looks just fine. Ooh, that looks pretty good. Yeah, my pads are starting to go. but I'll take even half of that if it's some pad of mine, if I use it a lot and it lasts for 10 years. I don't have any problem with that, but these pads are probably going on 20 or so. I'll show you what this looks like. I'll do a comparison from one side to the next. There's the one side, you can see it, the difference with that green. Even though it's equally as dark over here, you can see that intensity of that green it's brighter green, isn't it? So, if it shows, go ahead and use more. If the ink that you're applying on here isn't doing anything, and you kind of have to keep going, you have to apply some good coats, because remember, you're not adding a full saturation of it if you're sponging color on. You know, you're only adding a certain amount, because this is what it looks like, you know, you're adding kind of these lighter shades of, you know, that color right there. So when you wipe it, you're doing this, not that. So give it time. You can build it up to that, but you just have to keep kind of building it up, you know, and going over it like that. It's kind of, think of it like you're glazing something, you know. You kind of apply more and more glaze to it. You know, it gets a little bit more pronounced. So it happens very slowly. You know, not forever, but, you know, 10 swipes or something like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You know, that's a few seconds there. So it got, you know, to that level of darkness. So just don't kind of rush it, you know, in terms of doing something like this, you know, and trying to cover a whole area. Just kind of stay in one area and work it, and then just move on to the next. And it won't be a precarious exercise ever. In fact, it's the absolute opposite of this precarious type of process in terms of you know, the entire concept of this technique here. All right, now remember, these stamps now are not a technique. You can use anything you want. I can do this, you know, similar composition that I end up doing, and this could be done in colored pencils or pastels. Pastels would be really cool, you know, to kind of do some sort of flare. You're not going to get usually as dark, you know, with pastels or something like that. It just gives it a different look. Colored pencils are going to look different than, you know, oxides or something like that. Just as dye-based inks will look different from something else. So all inks are not the same, but you use inks for what you want. Nature stamps are no different than, you know, any word stamp or something like that. So it's not like, oh, wait a minute, can you use a nature stamp with, you know, alcohol inks, or can you use, well, if you can use a happy birthday stamp with anything, you can use a, you know, a nature stamp with anything. If you're going for a shiny look like this, then you have to use shiny paper. Okay, this is starting to come around. You know, sometimes it's, I don't know, you start working on something, and, you know, if you're achieving some sort of particular look with it, I don't know, you're just kind of building up the color, and eventually it kind of starts to come around and get to this kind of this resolve, this look at some point in time. But sometimes until you get there, it just doesn't look like what your kind of intentions are. Now I know that you know, from doing this, but sometimes when people are on like their third color, they're wondering, no, why doesn't it, you know, it doesn't look like this? Well, it's because you have to get to those colors, and you have to kind of work through there. And it doesn't take too long. I mean, it's, you know, this type of look right here is something akin to like a, you know, like I said, it's, you know, the background at least is kind of akin to like a painting or something like this. I don't think it takes a long time though. You know, I haven't cut out anything. It's not like this tedious, you know, kind of process. It's, I don't know, it's somewhat, it's like the zen of color streaks or something like that. And this is a Prussian blue. It's a blue, almost dark blue, almost black color, but like it really adds to a nice kind of a value, and it is fairly thin for some reason. It really applies quick. If you get some on your fingers, it'll really kind of stain them. You have to kind of use one of those little pumice stones, or just a sponge or something like that to get it off your fingers. But it's, I don't know, it's different than the rest of the line, whatever thing it is, pigment or whatever that they had to use to make this Prussian blue. It's just, I have a feeling it's just very different, the way that it works here. So anyways, I'm getting kind of dark here, but and I am keeping in mind that bird that's going on here. Maybe I'm going too dark in one area, but I don't know. I just kind of want to finish this this background first before I move on. Okay, this is the black. This is really going to define some of these kind of these curtains of light in the sky. But I'm thinking that looks pretty dramatic there. Let me zoom out of this so you can kind of see the whole thing a little bit more. Look at that. See how that black comes in? Now it's really starting to come together in terms of kind of representing a night sky, I think. Yeah, look at that. You have to kind of tap if you want it really dark in some of those areas. Just so it builds up. If you kind of wipe like that, at some point in time you're kind of wiping color off in a way, because of that wet on wet aspect that I was talking about. Okay. Right? Look at that. So they look a beautiful swatch. I don't know, these are really fun to do. It's the black, that you kind of have to get to kind of really make it pop, though. Okay, I'm really adding this on the perimeter. Okay. All right. Let's come into this. I'm trying to think of what part is going to be the water and what part is going to be the sky. I mean, you can use either side, really, but we'll see. Kind of bisecting some of these rays a little bit here, just for a little bit of variation. I'm kind of using the side of my stylus tool like that to make a thinner, streak, and then I just kind of build it a little bit more. I just kind of stay like that. Okay. I don't know, that might be a little bit too light in there. I might come into that later on. But let's go to our imagery now, okay? This is going to look strange now because they're going to be kind of floating in, place right now, but let's see here. trying to think of my composition. Let's think of the bird. No, this bird's going to be backwards like that, but let's do something like this and this. I want to give that bird plenty of space. Here, here, maybe up here, something of that sort. Okay, I think I have it in mind. Things always change, you know, you might have some kind of initial concept and really got to allow yourself some, not wiggle room, but I don't know, just you have to allow yourself the leverage, and that's the word I'm looking for, to really go about and change something from your initial concept based on what you're seeing as that piece develops. Okay, got that. And I'll come in from the opposite side. Something like this. This is the Pines and Rocks stamp image. You have to kind of hold your stamp down and allow that ink to transfer a little bit longer if you're stamping on a scene that's, you know, fairly damp. It's not damp to the touch like that, you know, nothing's coming off on my finger, but the pulp of it is going to be a little bit, you know, saturated, so kind of hold it down for a little bit longer, especially in the areas where it's, you know, there's a lot of ink underneath it, and you'll just get a better impression off of it. You don't need to press harder, but, you know, natural, you know, your firm, even pressure. Look at that right there. You can really tell what colors you used. Okay, and let's go with the kind of this background in here. There's going to be a lot of tone needed in here to kind of create some shadows around these objects that I'm stamping in here. So we'll do that and refine our kind of our lighting scheme in here in terms of the shadows after everything is dry. Okay, so let's stamp it out first and we'll allow it to dry and come back to it. Okay, so there's a tree, foreground, two trees in the foreground, and we have that background Pine Island stamp. Okay. Alright, so these are fairly wet right now. I just re-inked my black pad too, so now let's go ahead and stamp this loon here, splashing loon. Oh boy, I haven't used this tack and peel in a while, I guess, after I washed it, or I don't know if I've ever used it. This thing really stuck to it. Always save your plastic off of your tack and peel. Tack and peel is the thing that I've applied to this acrylic block so that I can use my unmounted stamps in a temporary mounting process. Here, it just really sticks to it, you know, just fine. So, alright, let's see this loon. Let's put him splashing down, taking off, or doing that little... I think it's a mating type of dance in the water, splashing around. I see these, I'm not sure what they are, if they're coots or something like that doing that. At this local lake near me, I see them doing that all the time. There's kind of in pairs, and they kind of do this thing, you know, and kind of a synchronized dance, which is always fun to see. Alright, so positioning. I want that head, I want this, you know, to be kind of central, so place it like about like so. First impression off of that stamp right there. So that has that splashing action going down, and then that's going to be the perfect opportunity for some of the Dr. Martin's bleed-proof white splatter painting technique. So I've drawn a lot of splashes into the design, and we'll do even more with some actual paint. Alright, so that is that for right now. I'll come back here in a little bit and add in some shadows right around here and give those images some mass. I'll have to darken in this area down here. And I think some brighter tones up there to really give it the kind of that deeper kind of a, I don't know, that green light that that I'm hoping to achieve here. But I don't know, good foundation right now for this scene, I think. It just needs to dry off a little bit. Okay, so stage step one. Okay, I'm back. It's about, I would say a half an hour after I made the image impressions on here. I need to clean off. You can see these stylus tools really hold quite a bit of ink. But let's start to really define kind of the surface area and how these objects are affecting the lighting within that space. Let's go back to some of the colors that we've used on here. And I've used a lot of the darker greens and other blues here, but everything is kind of floating on a surface right here, and we have to kind of tie everything together a little bit more now, and to have that the objects interacting with the space. So in other words, this Pine Island right here and these pines and rock stamps need to be casting some shadows so that they have an opacity and a visual weight to them, okay? So there's a lot of lighter areas in here, so I'm going to go back to my lighter tones and start to apply some of that. I still have some of that darker green on here. Let me see if I can get off a little bit more. Okay, I just usually wet a paper towel and I just dab right into it like so. If you have a lot of these ones and you want to just clean them off all at once, you can put them under the sink or something like that and just dab it off in some water and rinse them out, then, you know, just dab them off and let them air dry. Okay, now this is yellow-green. You go back to, you know, the peeled paint distress or whatever, you know, and apply that in there. I'll use some of this one. I didn't use it before, I don't think, but I'll use it now. I just wanted to add kind of a nice, rich, deep, and bright tone. Okay, so I'm just adding some of this right over the top of my rocks and underneath it here. Okay, now this to me is looking a little anemic, so I need to go back into those areas with, you know, the brighter greens and what, you know, and add that element to this area. You can always go back to lighter tones. You just kind of let the darker ones dry, and then you just go right back into it. But do, you know, keep in mind you want to keep, you know, the variation happening in here. you know, with lights and darks, that's how you see these curtains right here. You don't want to go over it this area too much with your darker tones, but you can always go and just kind of add a nice glaze of your lighter tones right back into that space, and you can see how much brighter it is. Maybe I'll kind of encroach on some of that white area in there and make it more kind of this yellow-green hue. Okay. Let's go with the light green, very bright color. Okay. See, these images aren't smearing at all. I've had time to set up and dry. Let's try this pine green. Okay, now see this island right here. Let's give that some mass. So what we're going to do is we'll kind of add some shadow underneath it, like so. It's very light right now. I'll need to keep working it, but I'll work from light to dark, okay? Do the same thing for these rocks. Pines and rocks. Okay. Now, this is a fairly dark green. It looks like it, right? But it's not nearly as dark as what's going on here because this is a little bit wet. So, you just need to move into your darker tones, okay? So this is a bottle green here. It looks almost black when it goes like that, but you can tell kind of it's green. It's just one. It's the darkest green out there that I've seen in just about any brand of pad. If you don't have that, then just use a navy blue, because navy blue over the top of that green will look, you know, more green than anything. It won't look blue. So if you know about mixing your colors and what colors, you know, mix together, you can always mix certain hues and values of hues out of other colors. So a yellow and a dark blue should form a dark green. And that way you get a lot more mileage out of your, you know, your expenditures, your investments, in the form of pads at least. Okay, kind of adding that down like so. Let's come in here like this. Okay, now let me give, you know, a much stronger shadow here. Let me build up some tone like this. I'm kind of using that dabbing technique to really get that built up in there. Okay. So it really kind of anchors it down. I'll do the same thing around the these rocks. See what's kind of happening here? You're kind of anchoring down your imagery with the use of shadows. And in doing the shadows, what you're doing is you're defining your light with those shadows. And I'm just using the same colors from the color scheme that I colored everything with. Okay, now remember I used some of the dark blue, okay? This is like a navy blue. And I'll use this kind of tapping motion like that, okay? I'm using the side of my sponge. If you're using like a cosmetic sponge or something like that, you know, you can do the same thing. Just get some color on there like so. Okay, these are just those kind of the, I don't know, what do you call them, the wedges, you know, you can dab on like that. You can use all kinds of things for your tools. Are these stylus tools better than cosmetic sponges? Well, in terms of comfort, I think they are. They're like holding a pen, but you can get the same result, though. You know, with a little bit more touch with the these, but you can achieve the same kind of result with those cosmetic sponges, too. It just takes a little bit more. I don't know, my hands get a little bit more tired when I'm holding these because I'm kind of squeezing them a little bit, but you can do it, and they're perfectly good tools to use. They're excellent. See my shadows starting to develop here, and we can see this kind of this lighting scheme kind of developing a little bit more. Let's add a little bit more of this up into my sky. Okay. This scene is all about that loon for me, but I don't know. I envision these designs being used in all kinds of different ways, and I don't know, when I was thinking about drama and those types of you know, natural events and whatnot, times of year, etc. I don't know, there's certain things that I thought about and wanting to see them in, so I'll get to some stamp sketches though soon with these upcoming new releases. Okay. Alright, that was the blue. Let me see something here. I haven't used this dark brown yet. The dark brown is a color that I don't think will read, but it does add this kind of element, a different element. Now see, it just looks like black there, but can you see how much more richer that is with that? I don't know what it is, but I don't know. It's just, I don't know if it's this one specifically. You can use like a purple or something like that in your edges, and it just, I don't know, it lends itself to kind of a richer kind of end result sometimes when you kind of tweak your color scheme. Sometimes when you're doing the same colors, it develops kind of slowly, but sometimes you go with a different hue and it can be very effective in a different way, but kind of in the same direction that you're wanting to move in. I don't know. Like on this right here, I think before all kinds of different pads were out there, we were using a lot of pens, and sometimes I would use violet and a dark green, bottle green, to create a darker black impression. I didn't like the Marvy black in the pens too much way back in the day. I thought it was, it just wasn't dark enough for me. The Marvy black pad seems to be better. So anyways, yeah, go ahead and feel free about mixing things. You know, if things aren't getting dark enough, then play around with combinations of colors that you might not think would be kind of transparent. Okay, so like I said, like a violet on here might look really good, just in terms of you know, making some area darker, and it might tweak the hue a little bit in a very subtle way. That would be look, you know, very good. All right, but see what that did? Yeah. Okay, look how dark that got. But look at that. It's a really nice flame. I think that brown sure looked good. I haven't done that for a while. All right. Fairly dramatic. But anyways, that's what we're going after, right? Drama. Well, I was going to say I didn't think I need to, but let's just, at this point anyways, let's try out the black here. Yeah, I think it's a little bit darker. Kind of adding it in the same places I did with the dark brown and dark green. Really anchoring that pines and rocks here in shade, shadow. Four corners. Yeah, that is getting really dark. I guess it's letting that ink set up for a while too and coming back to it, so. All right. Let's do a little bit of alcohol ink embellishment and going into some specifics. Let's try this. Let's try a little bit of this is a vivid green and a potato brown, kind of a, you know, light green and a, you know, beige. Something of that sort. These are alcohol inks. And I'm not trying to color something beige, but just giving it a little bit of a different hue in the shadows here. It'll be subtle because I'm using it in an area where it's a similar value as what's already been laid down, so it doesn't stand out too much. But I just want to tweak that color scheme a little bit. Kind of adding it down in the shadows. Alright, then I'll just go in with this green, which is more similar to the color scheme, of course, and I'll use that as like a blender. Just kind of blend that out a little bit. I haven't even received the plates back for a few of the other upcoming designs, but I wish I had these other ones, these rocks to go in here. Let me go and see if I can find my tiny rocks images. I need a little bit of texture around in here. just to kind of anchor that surface a little bit more. Okay, this is called Tiny Rocks and Tiny Rocks Small that I'll be using. Just some rock textures. I have these new rocks coming out that are a little bit larger, you know, to match these larger figures that are coming out, and they kind of have a little bit of a shadowing anchor texture to them. That can be used for land or sky, but I'm really looking forward to using those. Alright. Zoom in so you can see what I'm doing here. See those rocks right there? Let's go for another impression, kind of a lighter impression over here. Let's go use some of that smaller one as well. Okay. There we go. Slower focusing. It's just a little bit of texture. This one's really small. This is Tiny Rock Small. I'll put some around maybe this rock out here in the distance or something. They can almost be lily pads or something like that too. See that? I don't know, doesn't it give it a kind of a nice texture? Texture and I guess textural transition too. See something like that? See that nice texture on the water? Some of these scenes get so saturated, like I said, I don't know, kind of the feeling of it almost in spirit is when I start working on something like this, it almost seems like more of like a painting or something. I guess you are kind of painting on dye-based inks in a way. Alright, let's see, let's add some additional drama to the scene. I'm thinking about this little splashy kind of texture down here. Luckily I've left a little touch of that white up there, so I think this will work. But we'll see. And that's using a little bit of this kind of splatter painting technique, using the Dr. Martin's bleed proof white. Look at my bottle here. Okay, I need to reconstitute this a little bit. You just kind of squirt some water in there, or put some water in there with something. Let me see, here's a paintbrush. I'll just kind of mix that up a little bit. It's a very opaque watercolor paint. You can probably add a little bit of tone to it somehow. I don't know. It might swallow it up with whatever that white is made out of, but you might be able to tone it. Like in here, I was thinking, I don't know, what if the white would be too much in terms of contrast? But I want to try it out on this one. Okay, now I don't want too much paint in this brush. I don't want a big blob of it dripping out. But if it does, it'll clean up pretty good. It dries on the paper, and then you can just wipe it right off there, or you can wipe it off while it's wet. I would probably wait for it to dry, though, before I wiped it off. Okay, so I need practice here. Let's see, here's a kind of just scrap piece of dark paper. I want to get a feel of the where it's going. Sometimes, I don't know, it goes in a different direction than what I anticipated. So, okay, I think I have the right amount on here. We have the splashing loon figured down here. Make some room here. My table is absolutely cluttered here. Okay, let's see. Down here in the splashes, I'm going to, you know how in shadowy areas of a scene I reiterate it with some additional tone, you know, if there's a shadow, then I put more ink in that shadow area. In lit areas, highlights, I'll put some highlighted highlights in those, you know, illuminated areas within certain images. And now here, what we're doing is there's a texture in the design itself, and I'm just trying to reiterate some of that splashy texture. Now it's fairly dark down there, so I'm not going to want to add too much of this. I don't think. Something like that. See that little variation? I mean, I can do that with a white gel pen, but it just doesn't come out as varied, you know, as I want sometimes, so there's a certain element of randomness to this. I'm just going like a little bit at a time, because it might be too much. Okay, now, here's up in the sky. Why not add a little bit of, you know, stars up there, like that? See that? Okay, something like that. I don't know, it's kind of interesting though, you know, in terms of this visual dynamic where, you know, here's this water down here and here's this sky, and we have similar things going on in each spot, kind of reiterating something in both spaces, so it's kind of creating that relationship between sky and surface, which I think is a nice thing. You know, it's kind of a visual bridge, or it's a visual similarity in terms of creating these relationships between the spaces and things within a given scene. Alright, now here's where my control comes in. This is a Uniball Signo. I have my Shuttle art pack of gel pens. You know, these are the colors that are within this scene right here, so we can utilize, you know, a value range of those same colors and values with our highlights here. Sometimes a white highlight is just too much. If the area that I'm using it in, and it represents somewhat of a highlight, to do it in white, sometimes it looks better in just like a green. Okay, so I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Like in these rocks right in here in this space. Alright, let me make room here. This is nuts. Pads everywhere, and using this big, you know, large scene, I can't spin it around. It's driving me nuts. Okay, here we go. Okay, let's zoom in here a little bit. Or a lot. Okay, so here's my sky. And here's my rocks down here. Let's use some of this. This is like a light green. And I'll add some of these little highlights on the tops of some of these rocks, okay? That's fairly dark, so I'll add some of these green dots to the darker rocks in here. See these rocks down here? Okay. I'm just adding some to the top surfaces of them, just to kind of represent a little bit of highlight. But it's very subtle because it's a colored highlight as opposed to a white one. I might use a little bit of white in there too, but you know, I can add a little bit of varied tone in here, varied values. Okay, alright, you probably can't even see a thing on this camera. Let me try this lighter, kind of more like a pastel yellow here. These pens work fantastic. Really inexpensive too. 180 colors for, I don't know, $25, plus they came with refills for all 180 colors, but they're not numbered or anything like that, so it's going to be really difficult to figure out which one goes with which, because it wasn't necessarily next to, you know, the color of a pen wasn't right next to its refill, so. Alright, so can you see that little highlight on there? These rocks. There's little dots down here on the tops of the rocks. Okay, we have the splashing loon down here. Why not add some variation instead of just white splashes and splashes in the design? Why don't we add some of these colored ones? Because we have this colored light in the scene, so it would stand to reason that there would be that same color being reflected in this splashing water. Okay, we'll go with this one. Do the same thing. It's like a darker dot. Okay, here. Up here in the sky, we have all these different stars. A couple of them are different shape, but let's add on some darker stars. And create kind of a varied textured surface up here. See, like that. Temperature sky. You can do different colors too. Why not? Just so we don't have to stay all in, you know, absolute theme, color theme, scheme, whatever. Let's go with let's do something that, you know, might kind of be somewhat subtle, but might be interesting. Purple. Where I was saying that you can use kind of purple in the darker areas sometimes. It doesn't read as that, but purple and, you know, this color go fairly well together, so let's just add it in a couple little areas. Lime green and purple. Can you see that right there? It's purple, but you know, when you look at it like this, it's not noticeable, but when you look at it close, you can see that purple in there. Okay, let's just add that down here like a little reflection. It's something very subtle, or practically invisible. But I think it adds to that overall kind of varied surface and a richer surface than, you know, not doing those types of variations here and there. Okay, let's go with something that's going to stand out a little bit more now, and that is the white. The white is going to stand out more because it has, you know, stronger contrast between, you know, the color and the background. Okay, so this is white. Okay. I'm making some of these dots a little bit larger than just putting a dot down, you know, just so we can have a variation. Put some little highlights on these wings here. And on those, I don't know what they call it, on like a loon, the collar maybe. See this wing here? Let's have a little bit of that light kind of reflecting off of that wing there. Kind of just making it stand out a little bit more from the background. So right there. Maybe on the kind of the neck area we can highlight it a little bit, you know, like it's being backlit. And how about a little bit on the head? You don't do too much. You don't want to look at like an outline or anything like that, but it kind of makes it stand out a little bit more. I think so. Fairly subtle way. And on this wing here. Okay, alright. Here we have the sky. You can put stars within the kind of that flame itself. Kind of group your stars periodically. Yeah, you don't need everything kind of too symmetrical or regular. Put stars down here on the horizon. It's just kind of a textural thing. See that? It's kind of a nice night sky, and then if you want a few, you know, you can put some little reflections of those stars down here in the water. It just kind of puts a little bit of a surface quality to that water, a reflective quality, I should say. A reflective quality on the surface. Okay. So you have a little bit of a specular light on that water surface. Okay. Okay. Q-tip, pigment ink, okay? I say this in every video, but you don't want to use too much pigment ink on here. When you apply some on, you know, your cotton swab like this, you really want to dab a lot off. See, that's way too much there. I'm not going for that. I'm going for an application that's barely visible, okay? So I'm taking a lot of it off. And in doing so, it's kind of smashing the head and softening the head of this a little bit. Now I have a lot of control over it because there's barely anything on here, okay? So let's get back in here. And let's take a look at some of these stars. The stars look okay as is, but let's go for a little bit of variation on some. Okay, see that little glowing light right there. Okay, let's do the same thing on a few of them. Don't do it on all of them. Looks funny if you do that. But if you kind of do a few little selective ones, hold it at an arm's distance and take a look at it once in a while, you know, and see how these little touches are affecting the overall. Look at that. Does that look like a little twinkly kind of a magical sky when you do something like that? It's really easy to do. Just don't have too much ink on here. Or everyone has a hard time is that they have too much ink on here, or they go like that and you can't see anything, so they go boom and they go, you know, with a big splotch, and then there's a big splotch of it. What you want to do is, let's see, for that little tiny star right there, watch this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can barely see anything, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10, and it's really barely glowing because I'm barely touching it there too, but look at that. It doesn't take a long time to do, but just don't hurry it, you know, just kind of lightly dab it, and you'll get that look. Okay, so same thing down here. You know, if you want a little star that's kind of twinkling, I don't know, these things are like little pixies or something like that, little magical glowing kind of orbs in here that kind of light up the space and illuminate it in kind of this little magical glowing light that I think is really fun to do, and can add a nice little touch, you know, textural variation to your scene. This little tree out here could be, it's a little bit in the light. I can illuminate the branch with a little bit of this pigment. See that? Okay. Let's see these trees up here. Let's lighten some of them where it's light. If your scene got really dark in here, don't put any of this, because what this is it represents a little bit of light there, so if you put it over here in the darkness, it can kind of look funny at times. But see this right here? It's kind of changing that. Those trees a little bit, you know, they're varied, aren't they? Some are a little bit lighter in some areas. It really doesn't matter where you put it, just as long as you kind of vary it, you know? Have some of it just crisp and some of it with a little bit of pigment ink on it, and then you get a varied surface right there. So it's that through that variation that kind of adds to the richness of a given object or space. Oh, sorry. Let me put a little bit on this wing here. Oh gosh, I am so sorry. Here we go. See that right alongside that wing right there? So it looks like the light is hitting it, doesn't it? But see how little pigment ink is on here. I have to really tap it quite a few times, right, for it to even show up. See, nothing right there. But kind of go more and more, and it eventually starts to show up, and that way you get a lot of control over it. Okay, let me see. Let's go in here. So it's easy to get carried away with this too, because it looks so great and it's so fun to apply. But if you don't like it where you put it, just take a paper towel and just buff it right off. It'll come right off. So it's very, very forgiving. Okay, see that right there? Alright. Let's even put down a little bit in this water here. I like this look in this movie Maleficent from, what is that, 2 years ago or something like that? 3? the art direction in that, this, you know, the environment in this, yeah, I forgot the name of that, what, not kingdom, but place was really amazing. It was so magical and kind of plush with texture and I don't know, just different objects. Okay, let's zoom out here. Let's put some final touches on here. I know that looked like the final touches, but I think we can add something down here in terms of a some kind of foreground element and add to the depth of the this given space. I wish I had these new branches of mine, these hanging leaves. That would be really great here, but let's go with some of our Versafine super black pigment ink, very fine pigment, so it's really fantastic. This is the Reed's Large, using the black Versafine. I'll put this right here in the foreground, just to kind of frame this, kind of star the scene off a little bit. It gives it a little bit more depth in the foreground, doesn't it? Okay, now for up here. Let me go grab this other image. I'm thinking of Curvy Branch would be a perfect foreground for up there. Maybe. I'll test it out first. Okay, possible. It has the same kind of S-curve, you know, that's kind of going on within here. That would look good in the foreground too, but let's see here. I don't like that coming from above like that. Let's see if I want something like this up here. It would put us underneath a branch. Course. Do I want it open? I don't think I want it open like that. I think I want something up there. I don't want a pine bow or something like that. Even though there are pines in here, I want something a little bit, I don't know, a little bit more airy, I think. So let's see. Let's see about the oak branch stamp here. Okay, I'm not going to use the whole thing, although I could, but I don't want to just obliterate by covering up, you know, everything that's going on with that aurora borealis. I need to really watch that I don't touch this area down here. It's so wet. You know, that Versafine does dry, but it dries very slowly on glossy cardstock. Okay. It's coming like this. Alright. About like so. Okay. It's coming in from one side right here. Okay, you can see what that looks like in the overall. And then I'll balance that off with another impression coming in from the other side. So we kind of left an opening into the scene right here with that foreground base imagery. and the foreground top imagery. Okay. Let's go something like this, I would think. I've designed this so that it can be used in different ways. I think of that right there. Okay, now I inked up more than I thought, I would use, but better to over-ink something. I inked it up back here too, but I didn't know how I was going to use it, so ink up more than you think you'll need when you're doing something like this, even though you're going to just use a certain portion of it. It doesn't mean you have to just ink up that portion of it right there exactly. Okay, see that? Kind of gives it a nice little, I don't know, it's like a lid or something to the composition. Boy, I really have to zoom out to get that whole thing in there. These 11-inch scenes are pretty tall, I would say. All right, fairly large scene. All for our main star of the scene here, so check out the little drama going on down here with our subject matter. Looks like it's kind of caught in the light, like it's backlit, like a spotlight is on it, but look at all that little texture down there by the the splatter painting with the Dr. Martens bleed proof white. We have the additional touches with the gel pen, little glowing little orbs. Look at that little passage created by those extra textures with the the tiny rocks images. Kind of really gave that water some extra depth, didn't it? And we have the little bit of variation on our Pine Island there with the pigment ink, and then going up here into the sky, all colored dots. You can kind of peer through here and you can see those little purple little gel pen dots in there, can't you? So it's like those little touches like that are really fun to do. Speaking of which, as I say that, on this green colored scheme, gold and green really look nice together too, don't they? I would say a little gold more than silver on something like this, but you can put a little bit of like gold, highlights. Maybe there's a little bit of gold, specular light shining off the surface. You can put a couple up here in the sky. I wouldn't go overboard with it, although you certainly could, and that wouldn't be bad. But I don't know, I don't want it to stand out so much. Well, let me see if I can get this to read on the camera at all. This is just a Uniball Signo gold right here. Tends to be a little bit more opaque than my Shuttle art ones, so but let's see if I can capture it. See, there's like 3 dots right there. You see it? It kind of captures that light a little bit. You can see them down here too, that little reflectiveness. And then when you have it here in the water, let's see. I don't know how you use so little of it. I can't even see it here. Okay, I can see it right here. There's a couple of them right in here, and I don't know if you can see it. Okay, you can see it up here a little bit more. There's a little bit more contrast, but see, these are the little fun things to do. You kind of see that little reflective quality to the metallics here. Oh, there you go, right here. See that right there? See, there's nothing, but then when you turn it, look at that. That scene, that part comes alive, doesn't it? And that's what all these little things are, these little embellishments are. They're about, kind of bringing areas to life, and having kind of those subtle little, I don't know, surprises for your viewer. Or, if you're the one doing the viewing, it's for you. Or if you're giving a card to someone, they can really enjoy something on the overall, you know, but then they can kind of enjoy the little details like this. But upon further inspection, they kind of, you know, say, oh, wow, you know, here's another little thing, as subtle as it might be, that they can enjoy, you know, like little colored things, and like little purples and little hidden little things like that, or the glowing little spheres, which stand out as kind of like a secondary kind of a visual